Bletchley Park, Buckinghamshire. Winter mist, January 1944. Frost on brick. Breath smoking in the dark. Inside hut 11A. A bank of warm light leaks through blackout curtains. The room vibrates, fans, relays, paper tape whipping like a white river. A guard checks his watch. A siren wails somewhere far off, swallowed by the cold. Across town, London telephone exchanges hum like metal hives. Lines click, lamps wink. Public calls pass through miles of copper and switchgear, designed by quiet men who aren't allowed to sign their work. In a smoky office, a visiting mathematician smirks at an electrician from the post office research station. Valves can't be trusted, he says. They burn out. Your machine will die before breakfast. The electrician, Thomas Harold Flowers, doesn't answer. He only listens. He has wired whole buildings to talk without speaking. He knows what happens when you multiply one fragile part by 10,000, and still dare to believe it won't fail. The paper tape is threaded. A hand hovers over a bakelite switch, and in that hour, unknown to the pilots crossing the channel and the convoys clawing through the Atlantic, Britain is about to turn on a new weapon. Not a fighter, not a gun, a room that thinks in silence. What they don't know yet is that on this day they are watching the beginning of someone's end. The monster wasn't born in a laboratory with brass nameplates. It began in Dollis Hill, an ordinary research station of the General Post Office, where engineers fought noise in wires and anger in weather. Their daily enemy was not an enemy nation. It was unreliability, heat, dust, vibration, the constant fatigue of moving electrons through imperfect things. In early 1943, the mathematician from Bletchley Park, Max Newman, arrived with a problem that was chewing up men in time. German High Command was using a teleprinter cipher called Lorenz, Tunny to the British, more complex than Enigma and used for the most strategic traffic. The British had learned to read it by brilliant mathematics and heroic handwork. But the handwork didn't scale. For each change of the enemy's wheels and their labyrinth of patterns, the British needed faster ways to find the settings before the messages went stale. Newman's solution: mechanize the search. He envisioned a line of machines. The first, Heath Robinson, named for the cartoonist of absurd contraptions, would drive two paper tapes side by side, one with intercepted ciphertext, the other with a simulated key stream. If you could align them at high speed and compare holes electrically, you could test wheel settings by the thousands. It worked in theory. In practice, it shook itself apart. Two tapes never ran at exactly the same speed. Even when they did, a punch tear, a stretched loop, a tiny slur at a roller would fog the results. Engineers cursed. The math was sound. The paper was not. Newman's team needed a machine that didn't need two tapes at all, something that could conjure the key stream electronically. A phantom paper tape made of valves, vacuum tubes firing in perfect rhythm. They asked the standard question of the era: how many valves before it explodes? Tommy Flowers had an answer no one else would give. He said, thousands. At Dollis Hill, he had already learned to keep large banks of valves alive in telephone exchanges by holding heaters at steady temperatures and never switching them on and off. Reliability wasn't magic. It was discipline. You avoided sudden stress. You regulated warmth. You treated a room like a living organism and let it breathe. With Newman's blessing and against heavy skepticism, Flowers proposed a machine with roughly 1,500 valves, later more, driving electronic counters, phase shift circuits, and logic to compute the Lorenz wheel patterns in real time from a single paper tape, the intercepted message alone. Colleagues shook their heads. Valves by the thousand? It will die. The post office offered small funds. Bletchley, defensive and stretched, gave little. Flowers and his team at Dollis Hill scavenged what they could. Frames, racks, timers. Unglamorous parts on requisition slips with understated titles. The first Colossus, no one dared name it that at the start, rose in panels, steel, cable lacing, neat looms of colored wire. Spiky plug boards glinted like small cities at night. Camshafts clicked. Photoelectric cells waited to read the blizzard of holes on a tape that would scream through at 5,000 characters per second. They tested the thing under the only honest condition, with heat. Fans roared. The room became a desert with walls. Flowers tuned bias voltages with a calm mechanic's hand. The team logged failures, replaced valves gently, then left them alone. At last, the uncertainty narrowed to a point. The monster sat quietly, running, no trumpet, no newspaper, only the comfortless smell of hot dust and shellac. No one imagined that this apparent folly carried the germ of victory. The first trials at Bletchley were not triumphs. Colossus was fast, but speed without proof is just noise. Crypto-analysts, to whom the machine now belonged, demanded evidence that its electronic guesses actually led to real German settings. Paper tape tore, photocells misread. A whole night's run could be spoiled by dust. The report language was clinical, but the sting was obvious. Output ambiguous. Correlation peaks insufficiently discriminated. Valve failures during prolonged operation. Mechanical tape feed. Excessive wear at high speeds. It sounded like the doubters were right. We told you the thing would cook itself. Meanwhile, Heath Robinson, absurd and obstinate, kept plotting. It wasn't good, but it was known. And known devils feel safer during war than experimental angels. There was embarrassment. A machine with a heroic name on the drawing board and rookie manners on the floor. Flowers bore it in silence, which made some men angrier. They wanted speeches. He wanted stability. He took the blame no one else would take. He did what telephone men do. He changed almost nothing and watched relentlessly. Clear the optics. Change the tape path to reduce slur. Introduce sprocket drive to steady the feed. Add a theratron to tame a jitter. Keep the room hot. Keep the valves warm. The doubters still looked confident for the moment. The first improbable event came at night, as often happens. Colossus had run a 6-hour test on intercepted traffic. The output, amplitude peaks printed like mountain ranges, showed a rhythm too sharp for chance. A cryptanalyst, eyes raw from long days, ran a fingertip along the perimeter of typed numbers and smiled in spite of himself. The machine had found structure, not the answer. The direction. They reran with slight offsets. Electronic phase shifts, not mechanical, something Heath Robinson could never do cleanly. The peaks moved, sharpened, split. Analysts mapped them against the conjectured wheel patterns. 12 wheels of Lorenz, each with its own maddening step, some inverted, some not. The whole thing a tangle built to prevent just this moment. By dawn, the room smelled of coffee and warm bakelight. Flowers stood with the others, arms folded, saying little. The counter dials chattered. The paper tape hissed like a tame snake. And the teletype stamped a confidence that felt like conspiracy becoming fact. They had a set of wheel starts close enough to try. Hand methods took over. Mathematicians, linguists, and patient clerks completing in minutes what once took days. The first plaintext line struck quietly, ANNF. OB, Fuhrer, VH. Nothing dramatic. An administrative preamble. But the pattern continued. The voice of the enemy arranging trains, fuel, and bodies across a continent. Flowers' unreliable valves had not died. They had cooled the war by a tiny degree. Enough for operations men to ask for more machines immediately. Colossus wasn't a metaphor anymore. It was a creature with appetite and schedule. It wanted paper, electricity, and problems. It paid back with answers. The symbol began to write itself. A room of warm light running through the night while the rest of the country slept. The laughter ended first at the listening posts. Operators who once complained about the Tunny grind heard analysts ask for fresh traffic, with something like hunger. Peaks, offsets, hypotheses, now a cadence. The cadence became operations. May-June 1944. Messages by High Command about troop movements in France. Field marshals arguing with tonnage and time. Convoys queried. Bridge strengths debated. A river of administration became a map. A map became decisions. Short sentences because that is how the pressure sounds in memory. Colossus II comes online. More valves. Faster tape. Better filtering. Analysts shout times. Flowers nods. The fans answer. A general is misled because a code is read. An attack is delayed because confidence rises. Numbers up to 5,000 characters a second ripping through photocells. Dozens of runs a day. Correlation values spiking like artillery impacts on continuous paper. The cadence of a machine learning to speak in peaks and valleys. Psychology. The enemy believes his highest channel is safe. He uses it to coordinate the shape of a continent. Safety breeds verbosity. Verbosity breeds pattern. Pattern breeds insight. Insight breeds terror. Britain's aerial planners study decrypted traffic on rail repairs and fuel. Naval officers weave convoys around the long teeth of U-boat patrol lines. Field staffs feed on the rhythm of enemy resupply. Their times, their panic, their insistence on secrecy that ironically herds more messages into Colossus's mouth. The cadence becomes a kind of thunder, and ordinary civilians feel it as relief they can't name. The siren still sounds, but something under it is different now. War is still dangerous, but the enemy suddenly feels less like a god and more like a man who can be read. Strategy widens, confidence hardens, and the room of light runs on without pretension. From a technical machine, a doctrine emerges. Quiet, industrial, almost boring in its cleanliness. Signal intelligence at scale. The manual, if you write it honestly, is unromantic. Keep the valves warm. Stabilize power. Separate logical functions into panels you can swap without drama. Let mathematicians state hypotheses simply. Give engineers toggles and dials that make those hypotheses testable. Print results that busy people can understand at 3 in the morning. But a philosophy whispers through it. Speed is mercy. Not mercy for the enemy. Mercy for your own people. Condemned to wait while the old methods grind. Colossus doesn't make war beautiful. It makes decisions faster, which makes waste smaller. The idea spreads, not the machine itself. Its existence is a secret so tight that even allies are kept at arm's length. But its discipline infects thinking. Automation without magic. Electronically generated hypotheses. Human judgment at the end, not at the bottleneck. This is a doctrine as much as radar ever was. Myths accrete because myths always do. Myth 1. Enigma was the ultimate prize. Truth, Enigma fed commanders. Lorenz fed commanders of commanders. The higher the voice, the deadlier the misunderstanding. Myth 2. Valves can't be trusted. Truth. Valves can't be trusted by people who don't understand them. Treat them as living parts, their heaters, their bias, then they talk all night. Myth 3. Genius is a single name. Truth. Alan Turing is vital. But so is Max Newman, who architected the Newmanry. So is Bill Tutt, who tore into Lorenz's logical guts. So are the women who ran tapes and rethreaded them at full speed with burnt fingers. And so is Tommy Flowers, who turned a dare into a discipline. The enemy senses a new pressure. He doesn't know where it comes from. He tightens procedures. He shortens messages. He sends fewer. He changes wheel patterns more aggressively, yet none of it restores the old silence. Civilians speak later after decades. We never knew why the raids felt different. We never knew why the invasion seemed to go with such decisive timing. Doctrine leaves no statues, only schedules and survivors. And the engineering lesson remains harsh and golden. What fails on paper can win in steel when you build for the environment, not the wish. After the victory, the Room of Light is judged by a paradox. It must be forgotten to prove that it kept a promise. Orders descend. Break it up. Burn the tapes. Dismantle the racks. Sign the Official Secrets Act again. Smile and say nothing when someone else is called father of the machine age. They laugh, but in a different way now. The laughs are comfortable, complacent. Histories are written with missing rooms. The engineer goes back to telephones. He walks past exchanges where thousands of valves blink like quiet stars. He knows how to keep them alive. He has built something bigger than one credit line in a book. He has wired a continent in secret. Years pass, decades. The story opens a fraction, then a little more. Colossus is reconstructed by enthusiasts with stubborn love and careful solder. Visitors stand in front of a paper tape roaring through the night and feel the hair rise on their arms, as if hearing a beast breathe after a long sleep. Recognition moves slowly, then faster. The erased man gains contour at last, but he is old. His voice is modest. He says a thing any good engineer would say. It wasn't just me. Return to the first scene. Frost on brick. Hood 11A in winter. A smirk about valves that always die. The switch about to be thrown. Echo the opening. Reversed. What they didn't know then was that on that day, they were watching the beginning of their own silence. Not his. They laughed when they heard it would be electronic. They stopped laughing when they heard what it said. The thunder speaks softly in this story. No cannonade. Only an endless tape and a room that breathes. The thunder spoke, and the sky of secrecy never quite belonged to them again.